Hey there, everyone. Before we start the show, we here at Popcorn for Dinner want to give a big shout out to our good friend and illustrator, Kyle Kedzik, for helping us celebrate making it to 40 episodes with some brand new custom artwork, which is now up on all of our social media accounts. We love it. We hope you love it. And if you're looking for some new custom artwork for your business or project, you can look him up on Facebook at Kyle Kedzik, or even drop him a line at kylekedzik@gmail.com. That's KYLEKEDZUCH@gmail.com. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Popcorn for Dinner. This is Jeff.
And Kelly.
Scary Movie Month continues into the 80s, briefly into the 80s.
Yes, ever so slightly into the 80s.
Inching into the 80s is Scary Movie Month here on Popcorn for Dinner. And it's probably one of the more classic horror movies from like back in the day that I had not seen.
Yeah.
You know, like there are a few more as well. But this was one that it was like, okay, everyone, I get it. I should probably see this movie. Like, you know, it's like just the world is like, what? You have what? You like horror movies and what? So the movie that we are doing this week is the 1981 American supernatural horror film, The Evil Dead. The Evil Dead. Not just Evil Dead.
The Evil Dead.
The Evil Dead.
They're specific.
Yes. Definitely one of those movies that feels hard to watch now, both like as a full-grown adult who has seen a whole lot of horror movies, and also 40 years later after it came out and having seen so much stuff that is inspired by it. You know, like I can only imagine that you have notes in your notes about Cabin in the Woods.
I actually didn't. I thought a bunch about it.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's the obvious stuff that I didn't write down.
Gotcha.
I still have a lot of notes.
Good.
I have some questions.
Oh yeah,
We'll
I may have a little bit of answers, because I assume that Evil Dead was just like a non-entity to you. It was just like you probably maybe had heard the name before.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then is there like Ash versus the Evil Dead?
Yeah, it was a TV series that came out somewhat recently.
Okay.
So I'm sure you probably saw like trailers or commercials, spots for it.
To me, it was like, oh, zombies. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it became a big old media franchise. Like when I was looking into it, I was like, okay, I did not know there were video games.
Oh man.
You know what I mean? Like full on, and like PS2 era, not just like, they made like a NES Evil Dead game back in the day, like real games with like Bruce Campbell doing the voice for Ash and, all of that kind of stuff. So it's like, it became a big, huge thing.
All right.
I knew of that. I knew of like, the people who go to the cabin and they find something in the basement and it create, and it brings evil about. Like that's because that's essentially the entire plot of the movie.
Right.
This is a tough one. Like I feel like we're definitely not going to spend as much time like going through the plot.
Yeah.
Simply because it's literally just like college kids find a tape player. It plays an evil incantation. Zombies attack them.
Yeah.
A bunch of them get turned into zombies.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell doesn't. Like,
are they okay? That was one of my questions. So we're just gonna start there. Are they zombies or are they possessed?
I mean, I don't know. The only thing that I knew about them is that they were given like specific names. Like they are called deadites.
Okay.
Like it's not like a zombie or a demon. It's a deadite specifically. Like that's what they're called.
Okay.
So you get turned into one via possession. That's what it seems like.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, because his girlfriend, Ash's girlfriend, I forget her name, but she like went back. I guess his sister did it first too. Like she was possessed for a little bit, did some freaky shit, and then went back to being normal. and then was like repossessed and then permanently possessed.
Yeah, it was definitely like I felt like the later moments where they were turned back was just demon trickery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I didn't feel like
Okay.
any of that stuff was like actually like, oh, it lost its hold on her for a second.
Mm-hmm.
The only time where it's very apparent where it's like something happens and then goes back to normal is when it like takes over her hand and she draws the cover of the Necronomicon on it and everything. And it's like her hand was all like ghostly and pale and creepy and everything. So it was like it was clearly possessed in some manner.
Did the same thing happen to Ash's hands when he was driving at the beginning? And that's why they almost hit the truck?
Well, it was Scotty driving.
Oh, right.
But I don't know. I don't know if that is supposed to be what happens, because like that whole opening is basically like three things rushing seemingly all towards each other in a way where it's like their car is driving on the road, the truck is clearly on its way towards them, even if they don't know it.
Yeah.
And then there's the like evil demon POV entity thing that's rushing through the woods, and it felt to me like they were all gonna convene.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of like, whoa, and swerves out of the way. And it was like, oh, okay. Like, it was cool that it kicked off, like, literally immediately.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't spend any backstory time of, like, and then the kids all pick each other up and we learn what their relationships are to each other. And then they get on the road and spooky stuff and weird things happen. Like, no, this was literally just like, they're in the car.
Yeah.
And now there's a truck that's going to come, like, flying out of nowhere and almost kill them. Like, truck scare. Like 3 minutes into the movie. It's like, oh, okay, wow. Like it was a little confusing without that kind of stuff. Like I liked that it got kicked off right away. At the same time, there were just plenty of things that I did not quite understand.
Yeah. And
like later became apparent via like weird things. Specifically when the demon under the floorboards, which might have been my favorite part, the fact that they like trapped her in the cellar, but the chain could pop up enough that she could pop through and yell shit at them and stuff like that, but just couldn't quite get to them.
Yeah.
I really dug that. But at one point, let me see, I wrote it down specific. Oh, the demon in the basement, because that was, I forget which girl that was now.
Linda? No.
His girlfriend was Linda.
No, okay, so it was his sister.
Shelly was like the first one, I think, and she was in the basement.
No,
or was
Shelly was the brown hair. That was Scotty's girlfriend was Shelly. She was
okay. So then it must have been Cheryl.
Cheryl, that's it.
Okay,
yes.
well, just because I just wrote, oh, his sister Cheryl. Like the demon says like Ash and his friend Scotty and his sister Cheryl. And I was like, oh, sister. Oh, I had no idea. Yeah. I had no clue. I was just like, and third wheel lady, I guess. Yeah. I guess I could have assumed they were related, but it wasn't made apparent. So it's just like, okay, and then this girl's here too.
All right. She just, tags along.
I couldn't hold too much against the movie.
Right.
Solely because of knowing, like, I knew a little bit, and then obviously reading again afterwards, just how, like, tiny budget this movie was. And it was literally like, there was like 13 people all living in that cabin, literally out in the woods, shooting this movie.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a fucking cool story. Like Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell being buddies for like their whole lives, and they would make movies all the time. And it was like, well, Bruce Campbell's the cute one, and I got some interesting ideas for the camera, like holding it on a plank of wood and running through the woods with it to create some of those shots. Like he was really inventive with that. Bruce Campbell was charismatic, so they made a fucking horror movie. And it's like, that's so fucking dope.
That's brilliant.
Super dope. And, and I could never hold anything against it because I'd feel like such a hypocrite for being like, it looks kind of shitty and, there's continuity errors, like right at the beginning where it was like, is the window up or is the window down, guys? Yeah. But I can't really hold that against it because then I would sit there and be like, oh, but Clerks over here. Yeah. This is it's the same fucking thing. It's a bunch of friends making a movie together. And there's going to be mistakes. And if you're not buying into that, if you're not like willing to accept that, then it's like, well, then you'll just hate it. You just sit there and be like, well, this is garbage.
That was not one of my thoughts throughout the movie.
That's good.
One of the thoughts that I did have multiple times was this movie is gross.
Yes.
It's so gross.
Very
Oh.
gross.
Oh, there were parts that churned my stomach. I need to write a note right now. This is very important. I must make sure every word is spelled correctly because I do not need to look at the screen right now.
What parts sort of specifically?
The stab in the ankle.
Oh, God.
Oh,
Okay.
And oh, that was bad. And then there was another ankle thing later.
Yeah, like Ash's leg.
Yeah. Not a fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I am so thoroughly desensitized to those sorts of things in movies. That part doesn't even really get. I mean, I've never really been that much of like a gore person anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm rarely like, oh man, did you see that? That fucking head come off or those guts fall out or all that kind of stuff. It's like if it's there and the movie's good, I won't mind it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm absolutely not one of those people who goes out looking for that. Where it's like, I've heard this movie's the fucking goriest thing in the world.
That's not why you watch Saw.
Yeah, honestly, it's so funny where it's like, oh, those gross horror movies. It's like, well, they are very gross. But
I can sit through all those no problem. It's something with like knees down. That's because the scary movie Frozen, not the Disney movie Frozen.
Yes.
When he drops from oof. Yeah,
that's gnarly. But I just like watching it happen, the fucking pencil into the leg and whatever the second one was. I forget exactly what it was. It was probably the blade.
Like clawing.
Claws.
I think it was just straight up like hand grab and like tearing at ankle.
Gotcha.
Ugh.
But those moments I could not help but like, I couldn't help but feel like they were really funny in ways that I don't think the movie meant.
Mm-hmm.
Like it does sort of whiplash a bit. Where it's like there are moments that are clearly trying to be played fairly straight.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other stuff like the fact that Ash just won't stop getting sprayed with goo in the last like 20 minutes of the movie. Like that's hysterical and on purpose, clearly.
But he also kept getting trapped under things.
Yes. I noticed that like the first time it happened, I was just like, okay, it's a cheesy little horror movie. So it's like, oh, he's under a bookshelf that fell on him and he can't get out. Okay. And then the second time where it looked like it was almost the exact same thing fell over on him, I was like, okay, no, that's funny.
Yeah.
That turned into hilarious. But those moments with the leg things was just so funny to me because I was like, if you're watching it and you're watching these people, it's like they stand there and then a demon stabs them in the leg with something and they just don't move for the next like 15 seconds so that the fucking demon can just like tear their leg off. It's like you wouldn't pull your leg away once it got hit. It's like just the way they'd stand and just like look down at it. And it was like, maybe that was supposed to be funny, but it kind of felt to me like maybe the funny is a byproduct of the fact that they were like, hey, this effect actually looks pretty good for how low budget of a movie this is, so we're gonna show it to you. Like we're not gonna just be like and then cut away and then they're hurt now. It's like, no, we're gonna show you as much as we can until it looks fake, and then we're gonna cut. that was kind of a charming thing I noticed about it, especially a lot of the makeup, the like face makeup especially, is that there were times where you could see the eye hole, like where the mask didn't meet the actual person underneath's skin, or at least the tone of it or something. So clearly you could see the like mask they were wearing. And it was like, it's so strange to me to not be like, God, what garbage. Because in my head it's like, what? It's like it looks so fake and lame. Like that looks like something someone makes with like a camcorder in their backyard with a Halloween mask or something. And yet for some reason it's just like, oh, yep, there you go. Yeah. And you're just with it. At least I am. Like you're just like, oh, yeah, I guarantee you they were like, well, we can't fucking shoot it again. So we're going, or whatever the situation is, like knowing that it was this like torturous like weeks of shooting in the woods and just being like, just get it. Yeah. Get the shot. We got one try at some of these things. Like it just has to happen. Like there's something really fun about that.
Yeah. It's funny because I didn't even really notice the face prosthetics as much. Like I did notice the gloves.
Yeah. For sure.
they were just a little too loose.
Yeah,
like,
it felt like some of them were going to come off sometimes when they were like grabbing at them and stuff. I had my eyes on them a lot. Like, oh, or we're going to see it come off the hand or something like that. Like, oh my God.
Like, obviously, again, like, not going to fault them.
Yeah.
I think they did as good of a job as they could have as far as like the prosthetics coming off with the face makeup and like kind of trying to work it into the look of the face.
Oh yeah, like working with what they got, where it's like, well, it's gonna kind of look like this, so that's how they look. That kind of vibe. Yeah. Totally.
I mean, they did get to make up creatures, so
exactly. I mean,
these
you
creatures
almost have to
peeling
imagine
skin. Whatever.
Yeah, these creatures' faces just come off sometimes. It just happens. I will say that like it seems to play it fairly straight for probably the first like 15, 20 minutes, because it's a slight movie. It's not a big sprawling thing. It's 85 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's like it gets going and it just goes, and there's not a lot of like hanging around with the people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I think what happens is they get there, something creepy happens with the girl's hand drawing the Necronomicon. She doesn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Which I thought was hysterical in retrospective. Just like, she just moves on. Like,
yeah.
Oh, well, I guess that's a thing that happens. And then I think they're like having dinner, and Ash stands up to give a speech, and then the cellar door kicks open, and it's just like, and here we go. Yep. Like, there's no more like, but there are little bits of letdown in weird ways where it's like something terrible will happen, and then it'll cut to everyone just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
Until the next terrible thing happened, as though the previous terrible thing didn't happen or just didn't matter to them much. And when it like it's concerning like their friends and loved ones, makes them seem like lunatics. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, why does nobody care? Like the fact that she gets her ankle ripped to shreds by that pencil. And then I honestly kind of just forgot that happened. Yeah. Like I was just like, it's because it just like went, and then she got locked in the cellar, and then it just kind of like went to the next scene of them all sitting around.
That was two different people.
No, I know. The one who got stabbed. No, the one who stabbed her is the one that got locked in the cellar.
Yes.
And so she like goes off to bed or something, and I just really wrote, where did she go?
Yeah.
I had no idea. And it was like, oh, right. They didn't really dwell on the fact that she got her leg ripped up. Like, she didn't like fall to the ground and then be like, oh my God, we got to wrap this up. We got to do it. It was literally like, oh, she went to bed.
Yeah.
Like, just went to bed on that fucking ankle. And she's just laying there all peacefully when he comes in the room.
Yeah.
And like gives her a kiss later. And I was like, her ankle is ruined. Yeah. It is torn to shreds. And she's just like, yeah, well, I'll just sleep it off.
Well, they already know the bridge is out.
Right. I mean, I know that. I just mean, like, you know, if I have like a particularly bad headache, I'll be like tossing and turning in bed all night.
Yeah.
And it's like her fucking ankle got destroyed. And she's like, oh, I'll just sleep it off. It's fine.
She was drunk.
Was she?
I don't know.
Were they?
I think they were drinking at dinner.
Well, they barely had time because he gave a toast, and then immediately fucking demon shit started happening.
Were they drinking while they were listening to the tape?
Apparently, they were supposed to be smoking weed when they were doing that, and they allegedly, all of this is allegedly because I read it from other sources. It's not like I watched like a documentary on it or anything, or like heard one of the people involved say these words.
Yeah.
But apparently, they tried shooting that scene with them smoking weed, and it was like, so you're just gonna smoke some weed, you know? Because what the fuck are they gonna do? You know, it's like just fucking, we'll just have you smoke some weed because it looks the most like weed. And apparently they just could not get the scene done. Like
Makes sense.
Everyone's just behavior was too unpredictable, and it was just like, okay, nope, it's just straight sober. Never mind. But yeah, it plays it fairly straight at first, and I kind of liked the way that it seemed to sort of mess with some horror tropes. Even though, like, looking at it, it's like, man, like 1981, like, how many of these are tropes that they're parodying, and how many of them are tropes that they're inventing here in this movie that then get taken all the way, you know, to fucking today? You know, because it's like, okay, so obviously the whole, like, this must be like the ground zero of cabin out in the woods movies. You know, like it's just, you just feel like it just has to be.
Yeah.
But looking at it, you're just like, oh, of course, the kids go to the cabin and they fucking find a thing. And it's like, no, that's why that always happens.
It's because this happened.
Yeah, because this fucking happened. But then there were the other little things, like when they're trying to leave, or when Ash is going to drive her back into town and the car won't start.
Yeah.
And you're like, of course the car won't start. And then it starts. And you're like, okay, that was definitely them fucking with me.
Yeah.
Or it's like, oh, yeah, they're going to the cabin. Of course they are. Oh, the car's not going to start. Oh, the car started?
Yeah.
Oh.
I literally.
Well, now I feel like a dick.
I wrote in my notes, I was like, I'm actually surprised that the car started. Seems like it started just to spite her.
Yeah, I mean.
Because she was saying that, like,
yeah,
it's not
like,
going to let us leave. It's not going to let us leave. And that was after she was mutilated by the forest.
I mean, let's just call it what it is. She got tree raped.
Okay. I didn't want to be the one to say it.
I mean,
yes.
it's one of the most infamous like moments in the whole movie, and I read that
she hated it.
Well, I read that like Sam Raimi regrets that it's in the movie.
Yeah.
Like they did it
because it was funny.
I mean, I don't really know how funny it was meant to be because it's pretty just straight up like terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll put it this way. I would hope that it was not intended to be funny. Like, I'm really hoping that it wasn't intended to be like, wasn't that fucking hilarious, dudes? Like, you know, I mean, it's like, I'm hoping that it was supposed to be more terrible.
Yeah.
But just in that sense of like, yeah, but I guess we could have just not done it too. Like, she could have just gotten attacked and it did not have to be that specifically.
Yeah.
So it's like, but then you're also kind of thinking like, okay, well, how much of that is a kind of commentary on horror movies at that point? You know, where it's like, I'm not necessarily some sort of horror scholar or anything, but like, you know, Halloween, you get Linda, who's like, she shows off her tits and she gets killed by Michael.
Yeah.
You know, and like the whole like not truly substantiated theory that like sex gets you killed. Like, you know, like obviously they talk about that in Scream and everything, but like people who made those movies and everything and who have seen people talk about it, you know, like it's like, oh yeah, clearly in those old slashers it was all about, you know, virginal innocence and that if you did dirty things you got killed. And they were like, not really. That's more coincidental than it is like our message. You know, it was just like, that's just the way that it happened. Like, and like typically there's only one survivor anyway. So
it's going to be the good girl.
Yeah, exactly. Like it wasn't on purpose.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people who sort of saw horror movies that way of just like, oh God, it's just another one of those ladies getting brutalized movies. So to create like the most just absurd version of that kind of feels like a big joke, like that it's like, see, like, isn't this fucking ridiculous?
Yeah.
Where you can almost see them being on like the other side of the argument where it's like, this is so terrible and that's why we did it, because it's so ridiculously terrible. But at the same time, you're still just like, yeah, but I didn't enjoy watching it. Yeah. Which is really just what it comes down to in the end. It's like, I can understand your message and I can see, you know, I can understand if they did it for the message. I can understand if they did it because it was fucking the 80s and they were stupid and, you know, didn't care or didn't know any better. Either way, it was like, okay, here's the scene. So I knew that it was coming at some point. I was kind of glad it was out of the way quick. You know, at least because, like, obviously you didn't see it coming, but myself, I was like, oh man, I don't want to be sitting here dreading it. Like, is that the climax of the movie? Is the fucking tree rape or something? Like, is that what this is all building towards?
Yeah.
And so I was really glad that it kind of like happened and then was over, and then she runs and wants to leave, and then everyone forgets about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were a couple of other little things that felt, at least to me, again, like confusing as to whether it was playing with a thing or creating it. Like when Scotty goes into the basement and says, essentially, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
What is it? Where is it? I did write it. Back in a minute. I just wrote lol. LOL. And then later also, I think it's Ash. It might be Ash or it might have been Scotty too. I forget. I just wrote the line down. I think it might have been Scotty because I wrote LOL again. So I think I was like tagging it as like another dumb thing Scotty said, but was just, everything's going to be all right. And this is after Cheryl gets possessed by the demon. and fucking like gets locked into the basement and everything. And it was just like, everything's gonna be all right. Like, it is so clearly never going to be all right again in your life. And so it's like, is it just being a dumb horror movie because it didn't know any better back then? Or were they like, it's hilarious when people say that it's gonna be all right when it clearly isn't? Like, I'm assuming, again, I give a lot of benefit of the doubt to the movie on that kind of stuff, where it's like, I don't think they were that dumb. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure a lot of the little mistakes were very clearly like, oh fuck, oh well, just go, the fucking windows and any other kind of like continuity errors or things like that, where it's just like, we just gotta roll with it. But in terms of those sorts of like very specific horror movie things that it does, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they knew what they were doing. Like, they're messing with it, they're playing with it, which is super, like, surprisingly soon into that like horror movie boom for someone to have seen so much stuff in all of them and be like, oh, this all is so ripe to make something that's not quite a parody, but it sort of is. Again, if I'm understanding it correctly. It's kind of super hard to judge. Or like Scotty in the basement, when he goes down into the basement and they're all standing up around there and they're just like, Scotty, you seeing anything? And he's not answering and everything. And I wrote down, Scotty being a dick. And then he doesn't answer. And then Ash goes and gets the fucking lantern. And he goes all the way into the basement. And I was like, oh, maybe he wasn't? Like, maybe he was legit. Like, it wasn't just going to be one of those, blah, gotcha. And then it is. And it was like, okay, you know exactly what you're doing. Like, that is such a funny way to set that up, of being like, we're going to set it up. You're going to be like, oh, of course he's going to come back and spook him. And then he doesn't. And you're like, how long are they going to let that go? And then you get into that basement and it's all creepy. And there's the fucking like gourds and things on strings hanging from the ceiling. Which was all that stuff was like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre homage, essentially. They had stuff like that where it's just like unsettling to see, despite the fact that it's just gourds on strings.
Thank you for clarifying that they are gourds. I wasn't 100% sure. Some of them looked like hams.
I mean, I don't know how good a ham keeps in a cabin in the woods, but yeah, I mean, I think in the like shed, it looked more like bones or something that were hanging from the ceiling. But in the basement, I'm pretty sure they were gourds.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense for the shape.
Yeah. But, he's down there, he's seeing all that stuff. It's like legitimately creepy, And then there's that door at the end of it. Because they do that circle around the whole basement thing. And for some reason, I was just like, I just didn't register what they had shown me in that circle. I think it might have been a little bit because of how shaky the camera was a lot in this movie, that I felt a little disoriented sometimes, of like, whoa, that looks weird. But it like went around and I was just like, oh, is this just like a tiny little basement and there's nowhere for Scotty to have gone? Like, that's creepy. And then the door is there and I was like, oh, I must have just not seen the door when they did the thing. Okay, never mind. But then you're just like, oh, what's going on in there? And you've kind of at this point forgotten that they've set up the whole Scotty is playing a joke on them. And then when he pops up and you're like, oh, you motherfuckers. Like, I dug that a lot in a begrudging way of like, I wasn't going to laugh at it out loud. Like, oh, that's so funny. But it was more just like, oh, you sons of bitches. I knew it was coming. And then you made me think it wasn't coming. And it was totally coming. God. Were there any things that like legitimately spooked you, not so much grossed out?
Not really, surprisingly. I usually do jump at least once during most scary movies, or at least horror movies of the genre. Especially when I haven't seen them before.
You don't know the spook around the corner's coming, like, boo.
It's like there's always the times that you can try and anticipate it, like, oh, this is when this would happen.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously doesn't matter as much with this movie. I don't know why it didn't as much.
I think that the one thing, because like truthfully, and it was something that I thought of a lot when we first sat and watched it before I had any real time to reflect on it. And I was a little bit afraid because I was like, am I really going to tear into this movie? because there was something about just sitting and watching it the first time afterwards. I was a little bit like, ugh. And then it all kind of more fell into place in my head. And I was like, okay, never mind. It's not how I thought it was. Like, it was a really weird experience. But the things that did, like the things that would probably keep me from sitting and watching it again and being like, oh man, yeah, I really, really liked it. Like, I liked so much about it. But I could not listen to those fucking voices much more. And not in like they were so creepy, but they were just like abrasive, and the demon monster voices and stuff, and then the as effective as it was at first, but all the giggling from the Linda demon and everything, like that moment was so great when she's just in the doorway, and smiling and laughing and everything, and Ash is just like, oh my god, like I thought it was kind of funny that his reaction to her was so small. Yeah. It wasn't like he like turned around and saw her like cross-legged in the doorway and was like, oh, he literally just looked over like, of course. Like, like, of course this would also be happening on this night. Yeah. Like, yeah, all right, whatever. But it was like at that moment it was nice and creepy and like, oh yeah, wow, oh man. And then just the more and more it happened and the longer and longer the scene went, and I was just like, all right, this kind of stopped being fun. Yeah. And I'm just like, get on with it.
She needs to die.
Yeah, really. I will say, when it happened, when the first scene happened of him and her doing the little like pretending to be asleep game, I was like, that was surprisingly sweet. Yeah. In a movie like this. It wasn't, super like hysterical or, like incredibly heartwarming, but it was just sweet. It was just a sweet little moment between them. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So when it came back, when he's burying her, I was like, that's fucking awesome. Yeah. Like, that's the greatest way to fucking pay that off. And I was like, this is going to be great. And then she just lets him bury her. Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, oh, it's just for the, I'm going to pick up the fucking necklace and her hand burst through the dirt scare, which is okay, whatever. But it just brought that to mind, like, so she's clearly not incapacitated in any way. Yeah. And just lets him bury her for the sake of the scare. Like, it'll be so much scarier if I burst out of the dirt.
She still had a little bit of her sense of humor left. She wasn't fully possessed yet.
I mean, I more mean like it's for the scare, for the movie.
No, I know.
Oh, okay. Like, this isn't for me. This isn't for Ash. This is for you, people at home. I just thought
it's going to be so good.
Yeah, you guys are going to think it's great. Her death scene, which one was it? Who was the girl? Who was his girlfriend? Linda's death was, fairly simple in the like he cuts her head off with the shovel. Yeah. And then it like her head lands over in the dirt, and then her body keeps attacking him. I read somewhere that apparently that was supposed to be like, and her zombie body is trying to rape him. And I was like, not clear. Yeah. Definitely not as clear as that tree scene. Like, if that was what you were going for, it did not come across. It just seemed like, oh, now her headless body won't stop trying to attack him. Yeah. I didn't see any rape going on. But that was like fairly simple. I forget exactly even what they did. Did he bury her again after he cut her head off?
I feel like he walked away.
Yeah, I think it just happened and it was done and it was like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next thing.
Yeah. But Shelley's death, like this is the moment that I feel like I am at a complete opposite angle compared to people who probably like really fucking love The Evil Dead. Like the kind of people who would have like t-shirts and posters and stuff about it. Like, this is the moment that I feel like they are like, and that's the scene you watch the movie for. And to me, it was like, okay, let's just get on with this and let's keep going. Can we get going now? Yeah. Because her death scene is so long.
Way too long.
And you think they killed her, and then they didn't. And then she bites her own hand off. And I didn't understand why. Like, what? Because it's like she gets stabbed in the wrist, I think. And then, like, what? Just to, like, finish the job? Just bites her own hand off. And then they have to, like, cut her into 1,000 pieces. Yeah. And then those pieces aren't even dead. And I was just like, get on with it, movie.
That was one of this movie's gross moments. The noise that the body parts were making when they were like
quivering on the ground and everything. Yeah, definitely gross. But definitely one of those moments of like, this is definitely not what I'm here for this movie. You know what I mean? It's like, I will take it. Like, you know, it's like, I'll sit here and I'll watch it, and under no circumstances would I be like, I'm turning this off or anything like that. But it was really just a case of like, all right, let's get it going. I can assume that was probably like huge for people in 1981. You know what I mean? Of like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, okay. Yeah, I could definitely see people going and seeing that movie and being like, I just saw the most fucked up horror movie in the world.
Yeah.
But now, 40 years later, it's just kind of like, okay, all right. It's like you technically brought something new to the table in 1981. Unfortunately, I had the misfortune of being born in 1989 and not seeing this movie until 2020. So as it stands, I'm just sitting here like, yep, okay, yeah. She gets dismembered. Great. Can we move on? You know, and it's like, it's probably the one issue that really like permeates through the movie for me is that like, I've technically seen all this before. Right. I know you did it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change that I've already seen it. You know, like it's like people who sit and watch something like Psycho, especially like now, but even like us as kids, or I mean, I don't know exactly how much horror movie like experience you had by the time you saw Psycho.
Surprisingly, it took me a little bit longer to see Psycho. I did see Rear Window and Birds. I don't know why that one in particular.
Yeah, I didn't like Birds. But I mean, when you had seen Psycho, had you seen horror movies before? Like more modern and more spooky? Or
no, I was still younger.
Okay, because I had absolutely seen horror movies before I saw Psycho. So seeing it, despite the fact that it was like, this was fucking revolutionary. People left theaters like crying after seeing this movie, you know, like so fucking crazy. And then sitting and watching it after, you know, being raised on like Halloween and Scream and stuff like that. And just being like, okay. Yeah. You know, and somebody from back then would be like, what the fuck? Why are you reacting? It's like, well, I've seen way worse stuff on like cable TV. I don't know what to tell you. You know, so like it's sort of that vibe of like, I could totally understand if I had seen this when I was like 13 at a sleepover or something, that it might be like my favorite horror movie in the world because it was just like, holy fucking shit, my head exploding because of all the crazy stuff that happened.
Yeah.
It just cannot pack that same punch so much later after seeing so much.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, like
it's not the movie's fault.
Yeah, really. It's like I will 1000% respect it, and especially what went into making it.
Oh yeah.
It's just really unfortunate that it's like, but it's not something that I'll sit down and like be like, oh my God, you know what I gotta watch again? The Evil Dead. It's like, nah, probably not. Yeah. I'd be interested in moving forward because I've heard that Evil Dead 2, when I was reading about it, it's like Evil Dead 2 is essentially half a remake of this movie.
Okay.
And then half a continuation and beyond.
Okay.
So it's like sort of the beginning of the movie kind of recaps this movie, like shot all again and differently, but essentially that same story of like coming up to a cabin and releasing the demons or whatever, and then it kind of goes off in its own thing.
Okay.
And it's like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And clearly, you know, by that point, since this movie kind of put Sam Raimi on the map, it was like he had made movies and they gave him a bigger budget and everything. So it's like it became...
How much fog is in The Evil Dead 2?
Dude, that had to have been like number one on cost for this movie is the fog.
So much fog. Like I know, well, I mean, I don't know what fog machines cost in the 70s and 80s. Like I know they're not, you can get like smaller fog machines now for, you know, $30-$40.
Yeah. I mean, but also dragging them out there into the woods, using them in the woods. You know, generators or whatever the fuck they were using, you know, and that kind of like that must have been a pain in the ass.
Yeah, there definitely would have needed to be generators.
What's funny too, I was reading about it doesn't necessarily look that cold, but obviously that barely ever means anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could look outside and it could look perfectly sunny and bright, and it's fucking bone chillingly cold. So
Yeah,
it's like
it's
it
negative
happens.
20 degrees outside.
Yeah, exactly. But what's so funny is that one of the reasons they shot it in Tennessee, but Sam Raimi.
That's good for the actors.
Hold on.
Oh no.
Because Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell are from Michigan,
Okay.
and they were going to do it in somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
They wound up not, possibly for like multiple reasons, not just this, but they wound up not shooting in Michigan. They wound up shooting in Tennessee. One of the possible reasons is like, oh well, the time we were going to be shooting, quite possibly going through like a brutal winter. Like that would suck. A brutal Michigan winter to shoot this. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to go to Tennessee and do it. That year, Michigan, unseasonably warm winter.
Oh no.
Tennessee, unseasonably freezing winter.
Oh no.
So, like one of the things they wanted to avoid happened anyway. Just like, oh, what a bummer. And oh God, that must have sucked so badly.
At least it wasn't snowy.
Yeah.
Like,
at least there's that.
You know.
Probably not a lot of like getting super wet. Apparently they did still get like sick just from like, it's cold and we're living out here and we're living in a fucking cabin.
Yeah.
Like, this sucks. We're getting sick.
I want to know, is it just a horror movie thing, or are there cabins out there that actually have basements or cellars? Like, is that a thing?
Well, I'll tell you this. This cabin didn't. The basement is a basement to a house. I think a house in Michigan. Like the stuff that they shot of going into the cellar was shot in Michigan at a house that had a cellar.
Okay.
And in the
did they just dig a hole?
Yeah, they cut a door into the ground, dug a little hole underneath it.
That's brilliant.
Oh yeah, super great.
I love it.
and it's really funny too because it makes you realize like, oh man, like I wonder if it was comfortable or uncomfortable for the girl playing Cheryl.
Hopefully they took that into account and like made it a good height for her to be able to just be like peeking up.
Yeah, like I wonder if she was sitting under, like, you know, because you just see her like shoulders and hands and head. Yeah. But yeah, I mean that honestly was probably like, to me that feels like the most iconic thing about the movie is the demon, the deadite under the door that can like yell at you and taunt you and stuff. Yeah, like that feels to me like such a brilliant, like, I don't know, it's something that you feel like a lot of people wouldn't even think of. Yeah. And it's like hysterical that it's like, and she's trapped too. It's not like there's a moment when they're getting, you know, chased by her that they get out of the cellar and then close the door on her and chain it up. And she like peeks through for a minute and then runs off to try to find something or goes to do something else or whatever. It's like, no, she's trapped. She's stuck under there. And it's like, so that's what she can do, I guess. It's just yell at you. Yeah, she can pay attention to what's going on, see who else is getting possessed and or tree raped. Yeah. And yeah. It was like a really, really campy version of like Reagan from The Exorcist. Yes, she kind of had a similar vibe. Yeah, similar vibe. Because one of I couldn't remember the name Reagan for some reason. So one of my notes about her was just like, so is the Linda Blair one. Oh man, and something else crazy too is that fucking real ass shotgun. Yeah, that was full on just a shotgun that fired shotgun shells. Like, I don't know if they had much in terms of like blank stuff for it or how they worked their way around that kind of stuff. But I do know I read that the shot where he shoots the deadite through the door thing, you know, like there's the opening in the door, I think, and like you see the head pop through and he shoots it. Like that shot of the gun going off right there and hitting it through the door is just real shotgun through a dummy. Oh, like it's just like fucking crazy, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of shit you can only get on a movie like this. Yeah, you know what I mean? Under zero circumstances will any professional quality set allow anything like that to ever even come close to happening. You know what I mean? And like not even like, oh whoa, there was almost a little mix up there. It's like no. Yeah, it's like, but it's a dummy. Like no. You know what I mean? It's like you're gonna aim the fake gun at the head. We're gonna have fucking shit in the dummy to blow up. Nobody's shooting anything. Yeah. You know, and so but a movie like this is just like, yeah, the dummy's right there, and you shoot the zombie with the gun, so let's just shoot the dummy with the gun. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we'll just keep going. Like, it's fucking crazy, man. But I wrote a note right towards the end, and this was like, you know, you understand how campy it is by the end of the movie, obviously, and how like sort of the whole point is that it's like, and then there's just Ash left, like everyone's dead, and it's just him trying to survive. And I just wrote like, truthfully, at what point do you turn that shotgun on yourself?
Yeah.
Because in my head, it was not that long after going and getting it. You know what I mean? It's like once Scotty seemingly just dies, and then all of a sudden it's just like, and now I'm a zombie demon monster too.
Yeah.
Fuck this, man. Like, what is the point?
Yeah.
Everyone is fucking gone. Like, and there's no way off the fucking bridge.
Yeah.
I did find it funny, like, that Ash seemingly just started to, it seemed like he was starting to lose his mind. And then I guess Scotty, like, dying, quotes, the first time or whatever, like, broke him again or something. I don't know. It seemed weird to me because the way that he was, like, trying to pour water into his mouth.
Yeah.
And I think that was a moment where he said something like, everything's going to be all right. You know? And I was like, this is like hilarious. Like, this dude is just completely fucking gone. Where it's like, you know that nothing is all right. And what do you think is going to, like, he's going to drink this water? Like, it's just pouring off of his face.
Yeah.
Like, he's not actively drinking this at all. You're just like, everything's fine. Everything's cool. Everything's all right. And I thought it was like building to just like, and Ash has now gone completely fuck nuts crazy.
Yeah.
What's going to happen now? And then when Scotty kind of like, and he's like, Scotty, like, oh no. And he starts just like crying or something about it. And I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
it seemed a little, I thought it was gonna build to like a frenzy. I thought it was just gonna be like, and everyone's dead, and my dead demon girlfriend won't stop laughing at me. Scotty died. You know, and it didn't quite go as crazy as I thought he was going to. Apparently, there's way more of that in the sequel of Bruce Campbell just like going nuts. He seemed a little more subdued in this compared to kind of what I was expecting, at least.
Yeah. I want to know why he didn't stick with the chainsaw. Like, that seems like something he should have like brought with him.
That was like a huge weird thing to me. I thought that was going to be a thing because there's like there's a shitload of chainsaw action apparently as the series goes on.
Okay.
So he picks up the chainsaw and holds it over her and is like, oh, okay,
here we go.
This is where it starts.
That was like one thing that I knew was that there was
chainsaws involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, this is where it begins. He's going to chainsaw his girlfriend into pieces and bury her. And that's going to be his like, and this is, you know, maybe he'll name it after her or something like that. Like, who knows? But this is where it's going to start. And then he just doesn't. I mean, obviously, I don't think they had the effects budget to effectively like show a human body getting chainsawed to pieces in any sort of realistic fashion.
Yeah.
So I understood why it didn't happen right there, but I was totally fully expecting it to come back.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay, he didn't use it now, but like last 10 minutes of the movie or something, there's going to be some crazy chainsaw action, right? Nothing. Not a peep.
Not even on the trees.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, really. Just take the chainsaw and go running for safety, and just if the trees try to get you,
you just chainsaw the trees to death.
No.
See?
To death. It just seems so great. Like, I guess they are alive, even if they're not like alive, you know, like they're plants and they're living. Yeah. So you chainsaw it and it dies. So I guess so. Just
yeah.
You know, you just cut the tree's head off and then it's wait a minute.
What do you call the top of a tree?
Something that I did find funny. The demons, like according to that tape that they play, it's like ancient Kudarmian. I don't fucking remember. You know, ancient possession demons that will take you over and whatever, blah, blah. Pretty late in the movie, I just wrote, for ancient demons, they sure are uncoordinated. Like, they are bad at possessing bodies. Like, they can't seem to make them do the things they want to do. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a demon and you're in this body and you want to stop the person who's trying to kill you, it's like, just go at him with that blade you got.
Yeah.
And it's like, what did you say? Flail about wildly? Like, will do.
I mean, when was the last time they possessed someone, though?
That's true. They did say that they interrupted their, like, ancient slumber.
So
the only reason that Ash escaped is because all of those demons were groggy.
yeah,
That's what you're saying.
exactly.
We're sleepy.
Like,
give us a break.
You know, anyone that like shows up to like check on that bridge or cabin in like a week or so,
They're gonna get the full force demons.
Yeah, they're screwed.
Yeah, that would sort of make sense as to why they seemingly get like stronger as the movie goes, because there's that one point where the Cheryl demon in the basement just like punches her hands up through the floor. If you can do that, break out.
Yeah.
And then she eventually does. Like he comes back in. I thought that was an actually really affecting shot of just like him coming back into the cabin and looking over, and then you look over and the whole fucking door is torn off the floor, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Well, there's that.
Yeah, well, there's a thing I need to address at some point. But it did seem like they kind of got a little bit stronger as it went on, but then they just sort of die.
Yeah.
And then, like, I get that, like, you know, okay, so you threw the Book of the Dead into the fire and it burned, and that was, like, where their powers were written. So I guess, whatever, this movie's not going to take the time to, like, explain the exact, like, ins and outs of how this demonic possession zombie action happens. So I wasn't like, well, they never said anything about that earlier. It's like, no, yeah, they wouldn't. It doesn't matter. Just like, there's the evil book, throw it in the fire, that'll help kill these monsters.
Yeah.
That then, like, melt in stop motion, and then, like, oatmeal or creamed corn or something comes out of them. I read that, like, part of that was, you know, just like this'll give us a different feel from every other movie, you know what I mean? It's like, instead of it just being like, blood shooting out of everything, like, it's like these are weird monsters, they've been turned into these things. Milk shoots out of them for some reason. It was weird and like awkward. And there's that one moment where he like pulls that piece of wood out of Scotty's body, and it's just like brown that comes out, and it's just like, oh my, what? I did read that may have also been a tactic to not get an X rating. It was like, see, it's not all blood.
Yeah.
There's other goos that you can't say is blood.
Yeah.
So
it's just demon goo.
Exactly. Like, it's goo. What? You gonna tell people they can't look at goo?
Yeah.
So that may have been a part of it. And I will, like, agree that it definitely gives it its own, I don't want to say the word flavor, because that's a bad word to use when you come to gross goo.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the flavor of gross goo.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, it definitely gives the movie a very, like, distinctive thing where it's like, oh yeah, like if you happen to catch a clip of that on TV someday, like just of like a zombie blowing apart and everything, and you saw that like milk flew out of it, you'd be like, oh, is this Evil Dead?
Yeah.
Immediately, you know? Like, it wouldn't even cross your mind to think of anything else because it's so specific. Yeah. It's like, that's kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
Even if it is
kinda
very gross. Yeah. The one thing that truly confounded me out of all of it, like everything sort of like, even if it wasn't explained, I was essentially just like, okay, all right, whatever, we're doing this.
All right.
Exactly. Even the fucking trees. But the moment when it was like, he throws the book into the fire, they start to like, you know, like clearly getting affected by it, and they're going to like die or whatever.
Yeah.
And then all those fucking hands just come out of them. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Where it would just like burst out of her from the front, and then another one from the back. And I was like, what are these now? Like, and there was like it seemed like a huge one came up like out of Scotty's body on the ground or whatever. And I was just like, are there bigger monsters coming out of these things somehow? And then it just didn't matter.
Yeah.
It just kept going on with the like melting, and then eventually they were skeletons, and then eventually they were dead. What the fuck was that? I had no clue what was happening there.
I had multiple notes that were just like, what the fuck? What the actual fuck?
That's honestly, that's probably the only moment that was just full on like, what?
Yeah.
Like I couldn't explain to you what just happened other than the literal, like, so there was like a hand.
Yeah.
And it just kind of came out of them, but it wasn't like their sized hand.
No, they were like larger
like
demon hands.
Yeah.
That like burst out of them.
And then it's like, oh, and then what happens? Like, Nothing.
Apparently that's just a phase of their decay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like nothing involving those hands happens. I'll tell you that. They essentially go right back where they came from.
Yeah.
And they're never spoken about again. Like a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I truthfully really dug the atmosphere of the movie a lot, especially those tracking shots out in the woods, the like evil POV.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of really cool ones. The one like right at the beginning going over the lake.
Yeah.
You know, and then just all the different ones going through the woods and, you know, real spooky and whatever.
How did they do that one? Do you know?
The lake?
Yeah.
Allegedly, apparently it was Sam Raimi holding whatever the thing that the camera was on in a dinghy getting pushed through the little like pond or whatever.
Gotcha.
Which is like, hey man, whatever gets you a shot.
Yeah.
But the last shot, it seems fitting to end on the last shot of the movie because I literally wrote down, I was like, the last shot of the movie is the best shot of the movie.
Yes.
That POV of the camera of the like demon evil entity, whatever, just blasting through the cabin from the back door all the way through it, out the front door, like down the deck, straight into ash, and then just smash cut. And you're done. And the movie's over.
And then it's like happy, bright music.
Yeah, it was like the Charleston or something.
Yeah.
I was reading, I was just like, hysterical.
That was
Totally like wonderful like sense of humor. Clearly, like if you haven't fucking got clued into the joke throughout the whole rest of the movie, that should at least fucking hammer it home for you. Like, do you get it? Do you see the tongue all the way in the cheek? Like, come on. But it's super cool. I read 2 conflicting stories on how they did that, but they're very similar in terms of like how the actual effect is achieved.
okay.
It's just the like behind the scenes lore that makes it different. The first one I read was that it was just like they rode a bike through the cabin with the camera on the front of it.
Okay. Yeah.
And then like straight up to Bruce Campbell. And then the other one was that it was a motorcycle, not just a bike. And that in order to get that shot, they basically had to like run him over with the motorcycle. I would love that to be the right story, but it sounds so much like a made up story of like, oh, and there was the only way to get the shot was to literally run him over.
Yeah.
So they did. Like, I don't know about that.
Like running into him on a bicycle. Okay.
Yeah, but like legitimately, like I think the quote even said something about like, and he broke some ribs. It's like, that's fucking nuts. I don't care
For
how
one
much
shot.
I don't care how much work and shit that like you put into it. I doubt anyone's gonna be like, we need this one last shot. Will you get hit by this motorcycle? Like, get hit by a bike, I could see him saying yes.
Yeah.
Get hit by this motorcycle, I would see him saying, can we think of a different shot?
Yeah. Can we just use the bicycle?
Yeah, exactly. What about that bike right over there? Please.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. Not necessarily one I'll go out of my way to watch again.
Yeah.
Especially given the gross ankle mutilation.
Not your favorite thing.
Yeah, I can do without it, but I would be up for continuing on and watching more in the series.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it may get grosser, but
I mean, as long as there's not as much, ankle stabbing, thigh and up. There we go. We're good.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up here on Popcorn for Dinner for this week. Obviously, next week we will be venturing into the 90s. And I certainly do hope that the movie that we have set up is the movie that we're going to watch.
Me
Because
too.
I am excited about it. Hopefully.
Fingers crossed, because it should be great.
Yeah, we're going to need to check the service and make sure that it's there. Because if not, we may have to go and like find a cheap DVD of it or something to make sure that we watch it. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up here for Popcorn for Dinner. This is Jeff.
And Kelly.
Join us.